Welcome to Getcha Rocks Off with Mick Wall, the world's leading rock and metal writer. Each fortnight, Mick will unpack rock and roll stories. Stories that you probably won't find in print. So pour yourself a Jack and Coke and get ready to get your rocks off. If you're enjoying Get Your Rocks Off, you should check out Battle of the Bands, a narrative podcast also produced by No Filter Media that looks at some of the biggest feuds in music. Season 1 takes us inside the decades-old rivalry between Megadeth and Metallica and features a special encore episode with Mick Wall himself. You can find Battle of the Bands at nofilter.media/battle or wherever you listen to podcasts. And with that, here's Mick and Jon for another hard-hitting episode of Get Your Rocks Off.
Okay, welcome to another startling episode of Get Your Rocks Off. I'm pausing a bit because I'm looking at my computer screen and something is a different colour. I'm just going to stop it, John. Okay, we've started again and it's still a different colour. But we're going to carry on. Now, honestly, it's fine.
It's what he said last time with the whole episode that we can no longer air.
No, that was down to human error.
Human error, that's right.
Which is, another name for you. Even though I appear to be in control.
I talked wrong.
You learned me wrong.
Yeah.
You learned me wrong.
Yeah.
So anyway, another episode of Get Your Rocks Off. I'm Mick Wall. He's John Houghton. And today, John, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about the Monsters of Rock.
The Monsters of Rock.
The literal Monsters of Rock Festival.
Yeah, which originated
Castle Donington.
At Castle Donington in
every rock fan of a certain era and age will know of what we speak in this country. If you're not in this country, quite frankly,
no.
Think of your own festival. The nearest one to you.
They haven't got one.
They've never had a festival.
They've never had one like this.
Not like the Monsters of Rock.
Right. Well,
not in the middle of a car racing circuit.
In what's known as the Midlands of England.
The Midlands of England, which is in the middle.
Which is basically
why they chose it.
Middle of nowhere.
It's why they chose it.
That's why they chose it.
The confluence of motorways is why they chose that location. Facts.
To get the noise away from God-fearing people as far as possible.
Yes, and to enable the northern hordes to get there as easily as the southern softies.
That's right. The northern hordes would set
come
off
over the wall. They'd set off in winter. They'd start. They'd start in midwinter.
Yeah.
We ride tomorrow.
We ride at first light.
Yes.
We ride at about 8:15.
Yeah, because we want to stop at the services.
Get some fucking beer.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is world famous, but I love it when you were saying Monsters of Rock, because that's obviously what it was. But in the years I went, I wasn't at the first few. The first one I went to was in 1984.
Right.
And then I went every year. I want to say 1991, but I don't know if I was there in 1991. But every year,
Yeah.
And it became one of those things. It was like going on your holidays. I mean, that's what you did in the summer.
Yeah.
But even though it was the Monsters of Rock Festival, that wasn't how we talked about it, was it?
No.
We used to go, you're going to Donington.
Donington. Are you going to Donington?
I remember on Kerrang magazine in 1988 when Iron Maiden headlined, our front cover the week before Donington was a picture of, I'm saying it now, was a picture of Bruce Dickinson as if he was hitchhiking on a...
That's right,
holding
I
up
remember
a sign
that now,
saying Donington.
It might have even said Donington or bust.
That was it, Donington or bust, yeah. It didn't say Monsters of Rock.
No, it didn't, because it was just known as Donington.
It was just known as Donington.
Yeah, and Donington is, I was being slightly facetious earlier, but it is a motor racing circuit.
It is.
That's what it is.
Well, it was very famous. Still is, I guess.
Not to me. I don't know anything about motor racing.
No, I've never even heard of that before. But no,
But
fuck
it is,
that.
and the festival was in the field that's in the middle of the circuit. So if you can imagine, the racetrack goes in a kind of roughly oval shape, and the field in the middle, the grass bit in the middle, was where the festival was.
Do you know what? I never realised.
Where did you think it was?
Just in a fucking field somewhere, you know. And I'll tell you for why. Because those first
Because you
few
used to be
years-
helicoptered in. It's here he comes. The first few bands would already have played. He wouldn't have seen them because he wouldn't have heard of them. You know, he wouldn't know who they were. Magnum or someone. You know, he doesn't know who they are. The helicopter comes in, it's drowning out Kingdom of Madness or whatever it is Magnum are playing.
Yeah.
Oh, we're from Birmingham. Magnum, thank you very much.
while dropping bottles of piss on the stage.
For the kids to throw at the stage.
No,
that's
exactly.
Reading. You talk about your holidays. Donington, to my memory, was always the week before the other great festival experience, which we always used to call Reading Rock. Reading Rock was on the bank holiday, August bank holiday, wasn't it? Because it went 3 days. It went Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday,
Saturday, Sunday.
something like that. Maybe it went into the Monday, or it was good because the Monday was you had the Monday off or something like that.
Yeah.
But the week before was the Monsters of Rock, and they were slightly competing because although Reading became this sort of ridiculous indie thing, back in the day it was called Reading Rock, and it was a rock festival. So you had two big rock festivals, the two big rock festivals.
Well, I think one of the reasons Donington came into existence and then became popular was the fact that Reading Festival had become somewhat diluted to rock tastes at a time when new wave music, punk music...
because they used to... I mean, when you say
they were
diluted,
competing-
what happened was they used to have people like the Stranglers.
Right.
So that was diluting it. You know, I don't want to see the Stranglers. I want to see, you know...
Real men.
Yeah, I want to see Anvil and... I want that lot...
Saxon.
Chariot. I want to see Chariot and Dumpy's Rusty Nut.
Stallion.
Yeah, I want to see those guys.
Stallions on the highway. I
Fuck
want to
off
see
with
them.
your Stranglers. Fucking Stranglers.
Ugh.
Jesus Christ.
Girl
Who wants
music.
to see them?
That's the original girl band.
Yeah.
The Stranglers.
Who wants to see them? Not me.
Well, Reading, because at that time in British music as well, there was they were like opposing tribes, really.
Yeah.
The rock and metal crowd
Yeah.
hated the new wave audience, and the new wave audience looked at with disdain at Rainbow, or groups like. I mean, I think Rainbow did the first ever.
When we did our extensive research for
Just
this
now
episode,
on the phone, yes.
we should have looked up who was at the first Donington and when it took place. I think it was 1980.
It was.
And I think Rainbow were the headliners with Graham Bonnet was their singer at the time.
Absolutely.
Because
right.
I remember the story, this was the gig, was it not, where Richie Blackmore had strictly instructed Graham Bonnet not to have his hair cut.
Oh.
Because he looked like, he already looked like a kind of... like the kind of guy who'd go to Reading Rock on the wrong day. That's what Graham... But he had a great set of pipes, I want to love you.
He was a great singer, but he did
Great singer, great bloke.
He did look like...
he looked like he was on cans of hairspray.
Yeah.
He looked like a bloke on a can of hairspray.
He looked like someone that worked in an office, but was always hanging out with the ladies.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, that kind of guy.
Give it to Jim in account.
Yeah.
Oh, that Jim in accounts. He wears those bright shirts.
Weekend rocker. Bonnet went out and got his hair cut, and Blackmore didn't see it until Bonnet arrived on stage. And Bonnet could feel the hatred, the hatred of the glare.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was sacked not long after. He did the one album, didn't he?
Yeah. Because then someone with proper hair, in the form of Joe Lynn Turner,
proper hair bought from a very expensive
with his
shop.
own money.
along with his eyebrows.
Yeah, paid good money for that hair. But again, a great singer. Two great singers. Really good singer. I surrender. No one can sing that high except for Joe Lynn Turner. You need to be called Lynn to get up that high.
I'll tell you what, Joe Lynn Turner, do you remember him and Yngwie Malmsteen?
I do.
Did an album
Kingvey,
together.
as we called him. Oh, the greatest Yngwie story is when Dave Reynolds was doing a phoner with him.
Go on.
Dave Reynolds, this was on the Raw magazine, which we mentioned last time. Raw magazine was Kerrang's sister magazine. Me and Mick worked there.
Big sister.
Not so briefly. We were the big sisters. And Dave Reynolds was interviewing Kingvey on the phone. And Yngwie had this ridiculous sort of Swedish-American accent and thought he was far bigger than he was. And Yngwie's doing his usual, you will have played 15 guitars. And I did 60, was just like Beethoven. Just hears this noise. And then Dave's going, Yngwie, are you still there? Eventually he picks up the phone. He goes, I fell in the pool, man. Fell off his sun lounger like the beached whale he was. Off his sun lounger straight into the pool.
Who hasn't that happened
He
to?
was probably at the Sunset Marquee, but in the after it was the Sunset Marquee.
No, I bet he was at the Hyatt.
Probably on
He was at the
on the roof.
cheapo down the road on the roof.
Yeah, and everyone was laughing. Ha ha ha. Anyway,
Joe Lynn
Yeah.
and Yngwie did an album
Did
together.
I never ever met Joe Lynn Turner. Did you call him Joe or did you call him Joe Lynn when you spoke to him?
Ooh. I think just Joe.
Right,
I think just Joe. But it was when I was doing
I suppose it's a stupid question. Like you didn't call Ronnie James. Here comes Ronnie James. Hey, Ronnie. Sounds like the Waltons. Ronnie James.
Hey, Ronnie James.
Yeah,
Meet Joe Lynn.
That was one of the greatest misprints. I know we're going off topic. One of the greatest misprints of all time in the Evening Standard when Dio were on the Tube.
I was
the Tube
looking
show.
at it the other day.
Yeah. In the
Craig
evening,
Goldie.
in the Evening Standard, it said the Ronnie James duo. You can see some sub-editor who doesn't know anything about music going, Ronnie James duo. No. The Ronnie James duo.
Probably a jazz
Yeah, jazz. Yeah, I'd
Nice.
have paid to see them. The Ronnie James duo.
And tonight we've got the Ronnie James duo with their new triple live album recorded in a bar in Tokyo. And it's called Comanche.
Yeah, exactly that. The Ronnie James duo. Anyway,
So,
Joe Lynn,
can I tell my fucking
Yngwie
story?
and Joe, for God's sake.
Yngwie and Joe do an album together. It's got to be like 87, 88. I can't remember what the bloody hell it was called. In my mind, it was called Rainbow Rising, but clearly,
No. In your
obviously-
addled mind.
No, in my mind, that's what it was called. But obviously, that isn't what it was
No.
called. I don't know what it was called. I don't know what it was called. Look it up. Anyway, it was a fantastic record. I reviewed it.
This was one of your most famous reviews it became, because somehow it got 5 out of 5 and no one could fathom why.
Really? Do you remember it?
It was
That was a
massively
tremendous-
controversial. It came into the office. This was in Mick Wall's LA period, right? No one had seen him for 7 months. Is he still alive? Copy's still coming
fallen in the pool.
You'd been locked in the cupboard with poison. It was that era.
Are you so you remember this?
And
review?
no one even knew why you were reviewing Yngwie Malmsteen. You didn't review albums. You reviewed one album a year. Iron Maiden, because as we mentioned before,
Bloody good mix.
Yeah, Rod, your old Mick gave you the tape of it
Mick
before
gave you
everyone
tea.
else.
Yeah.
But you didn't review Yngwie Malmsteen. Yngwie Malmsteen was,
It was something rising, wasn't it?
it was Rising.
Circus Rising.
Maybe it was just called Rising.
Rising.
Something
Rising
like that.
Rainbow.
Yeah, something like that. But then the review came and everyone was going, why is Mick Wall review? Why is he giving it 5 out of 5?
Because it was a fantastic
The
record.
suggestion was payola of some form.
Good Lord. I'm personally outraged that you would even mention
Not me.
and,
It wasn't me
clearly.
saying that.
No,
It was
no.
people.
Oh.
People said.
People.
Yeah.
People.
Someone told me.
I'd been got to. They'd got to me.
They'd got to you. Yeah,
No,
that
no,
was the thought.
I probably was because I was just completely addled, but I really
You
did
thought
like
it was
that
Guns
record.
N' Roses. Someone said, "You put the new Guns N' Roses on, Mick."
That's Rises, Roses.
Yeah, Roses. Same. That's how it happened.
That's
That's
how
what
it happened.
Rising Force. That's what it was
Rising
called.
Force.
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you.
You see, I was
Still
nearly
there.
there. I was
Still
nearly
there.
there. What a monumental
What an
album that
so
was.
memorable. We've just remembered what it was called.
But it was a super group. It was a genuine super group with Joe Lynn Turner on vocals.
Yeah.
And Yngwie Malmsteen, the
Yngwie J. Malmsteen.
Yngwie J. Malmsteen and Joe L. Turner.
Yeah.
Anyway, a tremendous record, and I gave it a tremendous review. Next thing, the pair of them are coming on that weekly satellite TV show.
Oh, see, here you go. He was on TV at the time. That's what this story's coming to.
My show, The Monsters of Rock. This is about Monsters of Rock.
Yeah,
I had a TV
seamless.
show.
Seamless.
That's why I am a professional. You
Yeah.
see that, a professional podcaster.
Yes.
Anyway, we used to record the show on a Thursday morning at 10 a.m. and it would be shown at like midnight on a Friday or something. And then they would show it like 10
That was
times a week.
peak hours.
For my
viewing.
people.
Yeah, that's what they
For my
said to your
tribe.
manager. They said, we've got him the best slot. We were here at 1 a.m. on.
So getting rock stars to the studio for 10 a.m. in those days was no easy feat.
No.
Quite often, me and whoever was on would be so horrendously hungover that you'd have these incredibly sort of low-key interviews. And then there were times like with Joe Lynn Turner and Yngwie Malmsteen where they turned up early. They got there before I did.
Oh, right.
And when I got there, they went, "Oh, they're already here." I'm like, "Oh, right, okay. They're keen, good." I said, "Where are they?" They went, "They're in the toilet." I went, "What, together?" They went, "Yeah, they've been in there about half an hour." I'm like, "Oh, no, here we go. It's not even 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And they came out. And I know Joe, his eyebrows were a movable feast, but they were way up on his fucking head. The wig is practically levitating. And Yngwie, who's got the big hair, but it looks like, the doors on a Lamborghini, it's like this. And they're like, "Hi, Mick. And I'm a cup of tea, 10 a.m. I'm like, "Oh, no.
Yeah.
So we record the interview, and they're both like this, straight back.
Yeah.
"Yeah, I recorded this album when I was really, it's the best album I've ever done." And, absolute fucking nightmare. But
Jesus.
how did we get onto that?
I don't know. Monsters of Rock. That's it. We're back to that.
So I think you're right. Rainbow and Graham Bonnet.
Headline April Wine were on. I believe Saxon were on.
Yeah, that's true. Saxon, yeah.
Yeah, that was that. We should really look it up. But that's how it started.
No, on the radio where they go, "Get involved."
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
we would like listeners right now to get involved and fucking Google it, mate. I mean, I don't.
Who can
He
do
wasn't
Okay.
there. I
It
wasn't
started up. Rainbow did it. I think it almost happened in the order of the first Kerrang covers. The first Kerrang cover, no, slightly the wrong way around. Rainbow were on the second ever Kerrang cover. Next year it's probably AC/DC who were on the first ever Kerrang cover. So maybe they were doing it that way around, something like that.
I'm just going to confess and say I'm drawing a blank on those early ones.
Yeah.
I think Status Quo.
The
also
Quo,
did.
Status Quo. Those sort of bands did it because it Triumph did everything, didn't they? Those.
And because Reading had become, it was 3 days, and you would bring a tent and a Party 7 can of disgusting beer, and roll around in the mud like hogs, listening to the Stranglers,
the Enid,
and
the Enid. They
of
were always
course.
on. Yeah.
And
it would be someone awful like Frank Marino's blues band or something.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that of course one always has a
Yeah,
very soft spot.
I don't mean Frank. I mean
and their new
talking about
quadruple
the whole
live album from
genre.
Tokyo.
It was just like Reading. You'd sort of that's where you'd see bands you'd read about in the music press, but had never really
and decided they were a bit shit.
Yeah, they're just all right, but you'd see them at Reading because there were 57 bands on each day. But this is before festivals had different stages. That's the other thing we should say.
Right.
Reading had 2 stages, but only they were next to each other. And that was just so people could, be breaking up and setting up on one while they played on the other. So it wasn't like this festivals now where you wonder, here's the Avalon stage where there's some DJ doing rubbish. It's
None of that nonsense.
None of that. It's proper festival.
Yeah.
One Donington. There's one stage, right? You only got to look in one place.
One fucking stage.
You look in one direction all day.
One kind of
if you
burger.
If you get in, right, and you're looking in one direction, just keep looking in that direction. You will see Donington.
That's right.
You'll see the whole festival.
Well, you'll hear it before you see it.
Yeah. Well, no, that was the thing, wasn't it? It was always slightly behind, wasn't it? Because there's a sort of tower halfway down, which given the old style technology, which was just a wire that connected it, you just, on stage would be, all night like so, and then a millisecond later,
Sound. You got the feeling sound wasn't top of the list
bill.
of
Top of the bill was how much is the ticket? How much do I get for the ticket?
How much grease can I have on that burger?
Yeah.
That portaloo looks like it's
They
they
did treat people like animals in those days.
Completely.
Yeah.
And I think we were better people for it.
Yeah,
frankly.
we were.
That was true rock festival.
But in all seriousness, there was a kind of, wartime spirit about going to a festival, wasn't there? Because it was a long day. It was a long day. If you were a fan, you want to be at the front because your favourite band was headlining.
Yeah.
You had to be there at kind of 10 in the morning, maybe when the doors open, when the gates open, whatever it was.
But this is what I was going to say about Reading. You turn up on a Friday, and by Saturday morning, you just want to go home.
Yeah.
Because you're cold, you're miserable.
Yeah.
You've been living on beer and shit burgers, and you're dying for a crap.
You've had the 2 good. You've had the 2 good hours. You've had the 2 fun hours you're going to have.
And now it's raining.
Now you're just holding on.
You just want to go home.
Yeah,
Simple
you're just holding on.
Donington was one action-packed day. No tents, no camping.
Yeah.
And in the early days, you could the big kind of selling point was if you turn up on the day. You
come in. Yeah.
None of this buying. I mean, you could buy tickets in advance, but if you're in the vicinity and you hear the siren call, pitch up, mate.
Yeah,
you'll get
in. Yeah.
And the first one I went to was in 1984.
Right.
And it was it's weird because I remember turning up really clearly. And that's about the last memory I have. Yeah. And I will tell you quickly the story of me turning up. I went with Crusher, our old friend Crusher.
Yes.
This is 1984. He was still known as Steve Jewell in those days.
Yes.
And it was because for fun, I used to always call him Crusher in front of people. And he used to beg me not to. Can you believe this? Yeah. But anyway, so he had this Honda, this green Honda.
I remember the green machine. The green machine.
That never worked. It would sit outside the block of flats where he lived, Terror Tower.
Yeah.
And it never worked. And then like the TARDIS escaping a planet that was exploding. Once a year, he'd get this fucking piece of shit to work. And off he'd go to Donington in it. I remember this time we went... I was homeless at the time, so I was sleeping on his couch. And we loaded up on the Saturday morning. Kelly Pike lived in the... Kelly Pike was a music journalist in her own right, and by this point was a very successful publicist with A&M Records. Yeah. But she lived in the same Terror Tower as we did. And so for whatever reason, she must have had a group on that day. She came with us. And I remember we loaded up the green machine with cases and cases of lager. We bought a bottle of Old Grandad whiskey. We bought a bottle of, not tequila, the other one.
Mezcal.
Mezcal with the worm.
The worm in the bottom.
Yeah.
Hallucinogenic worms.
Yeah.
But the truth was you're just so pissed by it.
Yeah.
Got to the end of the bottle.
All of the above is true. But we also had a big bag of weed and a big supply of cocaine.
Right, yeah.
And
So you were ready. I mean,
we were ready.
Yeah.
Oh, we were ready.
Yeah.
We were ready before we got into the car.
Yeah.
So we get into this car. Can you imagine? I mean, I think by the time we got to Donington, about lunchtime, the first band was on when we got there. And we'd already done at least one bottle of mezcal. God knows how many beers. Smoking, spilling cocaine everywhere, trying to get up your nose on the M4 at 80 miles an hour.
don't be on the M, mate. The M4 goes to Wales. No wonder you fucking missed it.
What's the one goes
You
to
want
Donington?
you want the M1, mate.
M1, yeah.
That was the whole point of Donington. You just had to go on the M1, just the one road. That's all you need to remember. Junction
This is all
23.
true.
Off you go.
This is all true.
It was right by the motorway junction. Seriously, that was the point of why they chose it. It was right on the junction of the motorway. You could not miss it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, Crusher, because he wasn't used to getting backstage passes and that kind of. He became used to it very soon after.
Very quickly, you do
very
become used to
quickly
it.
after.
Let me tell you, you do become used to it very quickly, and it becomes very hard when you then don't get backstage
Well,
passes for
that
things.
breaks your heart, you know.
It
But
does.
you've gone from VIP to. Sorry, who are you? You're not on the list.
NIP.
Are you? But because he's in this early days of a pass, obviously means you're very special, which it doesn't to the security people.
Yeah.
And we're looking for the VIP or the backstage,
VIP, yeah.
the car park.
Oh, yeah.
And as you drive into Donington, all the stewards will be telling you to go that way.
Yeah.
And Crush will be leaning out the window going, VIP, you fucking wanker! You know, and I'll be going, call it, Crush, call it, man. But we got there, and I remember I was so gone. And it's like 1:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I remember falling out of the car and literally on hands and knees up to the bit where you go in.
Yeah.
And they're going, "You're right, man." Like, show them the pass. Yeah, in you go. And I literally hands and knees. I then crashed out. Gary Moore was playing. I was down to review two bands. One was Y&T, who'd already played and gone by the time I got there. And the other one was Gary Moore, for which I was unconscious, face down
Amazingly,
in the mud.
they both got great reviews.
Funny you should say that, because I had to say to people after, I was supposed to, was he good? Yeah, he was great. Oh, that's good. And Kerrang afterwards would always run a big spread on Donington. And, and you'd get, that year, I think AC/DC headlined 84, whatever.
Yeah. They did it loads of times, didn't they?
And there'd be like this enormous review of AC/DC. I think Van Halen were on that year.
Yeah.
Enormous review of Van Halen.
By people who were conscious.
Conscious and actually at the show watching the band.
Yeah.
And then big reviews of whoever else. And then Y&T was like, I'm holding up
paragraph.
about an inch of space here.
Yeah.
Tiny review.
And the first part of that was Y&T, an American band whose singer is and drummer is and so Research as it's known.
Absolutely. Sonic. What would you say?
Sonic.
Searing guitar solo.
Yeah, terrific guitar solo.
Floorboard bass.
Known for it.
Thumping drums.
Yeah, I thought the
Soaring
vocals a bit low in the mix.
Yeah, the sound was a bit off.
I personally didn't hear it that well.
That's how bad the sound was.
Yeah.
I was still on the M1.
And I didn't hear
And I
it.
didn't
I
hear
can
it
tell you I
very,
didn't
so
hear it.
I blame the band.
Yeah.
And then Gary Moore, or as Ross always used to call him, Gary Snore.
Yes, he did, didn't he? Yeah. Old sausage fingers is back.
Yeah,
He had massive hands, Gary Moore, didn't he?
he did, and a big, massive scar in his face. Who fucking knows? But again, tiny review, but very praiseworthy.
Yeah.
Well done, Gary.
Yeah.
As I pulled the mud out of my hair, you know.
Yeah.
And that's more or less all I remember, apart from then trying to leave the site several hours later with Crusher screaming at people to get out of his way. By which time every last drop was gone, all the drugs had gone, everything. Poor old Kelly Pike's still in the back, you know, looking like something out of The Walking Dead. Because in years to come, we would stay in the hotel.
That's right.
We?
Well, we should. I suppose we should sort of slightly paint the scene at this point. There was a great harmony between Kerrang and the Monsters of Rock Festival, because both British, both the only thing that really catered to that market, which was a
Absolutely.
huge market, but there's no one else in it. So when Donington came along, Kerrang would be offered as, basically as, Sounds would get a couple of backstage passes because they only had a couple of writers who were interested. But Kerrang, everyone would be invited.
Everybody wanted to go.
Yeah, everyone wanted to go. It was a big weekend away. Everyone would be invited. And credit to them, they'd invite the ad sales people because they'd spent all year doing deals to do the ad campaign for Donington and all the rest of it. The greater part of my year was taken up with trying to, as news editor, would guess which bands were going to be playing. Sometimes you'd know the headliner, but you'd hear rumours of other bands. And I'd have to call Maurice Jones, who was the miserable promoter of Donington, and ask him with his miserable
a
voice.
born Midlands.
Yeah,
person.
I mean, the guy...
Not to say that people from Midlands are miserable
but
in
he
any
was,
way, shape,
Maurice
or
Jones was not a ray of sunshine.
No.
And particularly when I rang him up, because I was trying to put out news that he didn't want people to know. Why he didn't want them to know? Who knows? Who cares if anyone knows who's on it? It's more exciting if you do know, isn't it? But so you'd try, Morris, speaking to, I'd have a good sort of like speaking to probably Ross, but Ross had been speaking to Peter Mensch. Hear Metallica on. Who told you that? He was just miserable. But anyway, so... sound like a donor, but there'd be this big, huge build-up to Donington, and then the passes would arrive in the office, a big envelope full of passes, and give them out, you have your name on and all. It was great.
Do you remember we had a Kerrang tent there?
That was right. So it got to the point where the backstage got bigger and bigger. As the festival got bigger, the backstage area, which was fenced off with romantic barbed wire and huge, corrugated iron panels, got bigger, and there would be hospitality tents and. If Iron Maiden were headlining, the biggest hospitality tent would be EMI, and they would give you a wristband for that tent. And if you got the wristband, you could go in and out of that tent whenever you wanted. The food was free, the drink was free, and so on and so forth, and down and down and down till you got to whoever was on the bottom of it. When their record company was smaller, but Kerrang would also have a tent and would also have wristbands to distribute. And so if you got all of a sudden we jumped the fence and we're like, people would be asking, can you get me a wristband? Can you get me into the Kerrang? The Wild Hearts or someone. Can you get me into the Kerrang tent? Yeah,
choir,
sure.
You mean the choir boys?
The choir boys. It would be those guys because they hadn't yet made it or whatever. But they were all nice. Yeah, were your mates, weren't they? You sort of seen them all year. So come into the tent, and they would get their day out, so they would drink all day, and then. As we mentioned, the site was picked for its centrality. If you come from the north, you just drive down the M1. You come from the south, you just drive up the M1. Both of you come to Donington eventually.
It's quite handy for Morris as well, as he
lived in a village.
Coincidentally,
Morris lived in a village called Donington, I believe. Yeah.
in a castle.
Yeah.
He lived in a castle in a place called Donington.
Yeah, so amazingly enough. But I've lost my train of thought. The other thing I'd say with everyone, right? There were two hotels.
Oh yeah,
there was the Novotel and the
other one that I never got to.
No,
I think the other one was slightly posher.
It might have been the Post House. It was the Post House.
It wasn't
the Post House. It wasn't.
No,
they're both. They're just motorway hotels.
And go between the two.
These weren't the usual hotel. There wasn't the Sunset Marquee.
No,
the Sunset Marquee ain't in Donington, mate. They're the classic. You're driving along. You're tired. I'm stopping for the night because I've got to go to Scotland, or I'm coming from Scotland, I've got to go to London. I'll book the Post House or the no. That was its business for 51 weeks of the year.
But not
the 52nd week of the year, they were fully booked out.
With rock stars, would-be rock stars,
would-be rock stars. Because I think, in all truth, the joking about the helicopter, the big bands didn't stay on site, I don't think. Maybe you're right. To me, I never saw, David Lee Roth in the Post House staying. He might have been at the bar.
That's true. But I do remember seeing Bon Jovi, Metallica.
Yeah.
Because they were lower on the bill at that point.
Yeah.
But I remember one classic occasion. Which year? I want to say 85, but I can't remember. I think Bon Jovi headlined in 87. 87. Anyway, I want to say 87 because Slippery was the year before.
I think it was, yeah. 87 was the first year I went, and I again have very little memory of who was on.
So pretty sure Bon Jovi were lower on the bill in 85. But I can remember this, being in the bar at the Novotel, because by this point I think we started even going on the Friday.
Yeah.
Get
Oh, no, you would go
bollocks
on the Friday.
night.
Yeah, the Friday
go to
night, yeah.
Festival on the Saturday,
Yeah.
come back Saturday night even more worn out. You know.
and go home on Sunday, yeah.
And I remember sitting with a bunch of Kerrang people and other various hangers-on. And John Bon Jovi, who I'd interviewed, I don't know, some little time before, had no hits yet. And he was still in his bouncy puppy stage.
Yeah.
And he was coming through the bar and he saw me. And he was like, hey, man. I'm like,
Dude.
Yeah, and I'm like, me mates. You know.
Yeah.
And I said, how's it going? He goes, man, I got a new pair of Chelsea boots and it's really great. I'm having a great time. And it was like, okay, mate, off you go. Pat him on the head and like, leave the men now to drink.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 years later, they're headlining and they have their own compound backstage.
Yes.
So you can get backstage.
Yeah.
You can get into the VIP bit. And then beyond that is the compound for the headline band. And I find myself in the compound for the headline band because I'm doing a little piece for Radio 1 where in those days it was like a reel-to-reel. So, big day today, John, know, that kind of crap. And I've been spending, I don't know what the story was, but I think probably it was in America. I'd spent a lot of that year away and I hadn't followed the curve of Bon Jovi at all. I knew Slippery had come out in the summer of 86 or whenever it was. But it's now August 87. And I haven't been staying with it, all I know is that 2 nights before Donington, they're on Top of the Pops doing Never Say Goodbye.
Right,
it's like the final single from Slippery.
Thank
and I
God.
And I just kind of just caught it as a glimpse. And I literally thought, they've got a new single out. Must be an album. There must be a new...
Yeah, so you screwed it, yeah.
So in the afternoon, a sunny, I go back on Radio 1. I'm like, hi, John. Whoa, hug, And I said, by the way, I love the new album. And he went, what new album? And I went, your new album?
Yeah.
And he went, I haven't got a new album. And I went, no, I know that. I mean, I know that.
Yeah, of course,
Did I say album?
Yeah. I meant boots, your new boots. Love your boots.
This is all, as we're doing the Radio 1 thing.
Yeah.
It was
teeth
cringy.
grinding.
Yeah. 'Cause I hadn't meant any harm.
No, but it's a research issue. I mean, you get to go back and fire your researcher.
My people clearly hadn't done their job.
No.
Or I would never have found myself in that toe curling
situation.
Embarrassing situation.
Yeah.
But he was always by that point, he was always very, very serious.
Businesslike.
Really?
Well, he had the idea. I mean, how much of this is true or not, you never know. He had the idea that he was sort of like Bruce Springsteen, didn't he?
Well, he wanted to be Bruce
Yeah,
Springsteen.
in his mind, he was like, Bruce was doing The River and John was doing New Jersey or whatever it was.
Bruce was doing Born to Run.
Yeah.
And John was doing Bad Medicine.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Similar.
Same things.
Similar.
Yeah.
Bad Medicine.
Yeah.
Born to Run.
Whatever, yeah.
Baby Tramps Like Us.
Yeah. He was doing all that. He had the
But what he didn't realise, was that he was Joey Tempest.
Yeah.
That's what he
yeah.
didn't
That's what he was good at.
grasp.
But this is the thing about, we've said on previous episodes, but they always want the thing they can't have.
Yeah.
The big bands want the artistic, kudos but what Bon Jovi was great at was looking amazing and singing hit songs.
Yeah.
That's what he was good at.
Lay your hands.
Yeah, well, that
on
was
me.
great. You don't need to. You
your
don't need to be
hands on
writing
me.
"Stolen
Lay
Car"
your hands
or
on
"Darkness on the Edge of Town." You don't need. Bruce is doing
lay
that.
your fucking hands
you
on
do
me.
your thing.
Call
Yeah.
it a day.
Exactly. Richie Sambora got it, didn't he? I mean,
He certainly
he's
did get
married to the umpteenth model, and
Heather Locklear.
Heather Locklear. Yeah, what a girl.
What's her name that was with Tommy
Cher?
Lee? Cher.
Yeah.
mate, if you could sire Cher in
man,
those,
yeah.
I mean, she was a kind of all-American woman that would school a young boy,
the younger rock star in
school
the
him
ways of righteousness.
and sweet love.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Richie was a keen
If I could turn back time, I'd do the same. If I had my time again, me and Cher. Yeah.
I tell you another wonderful memory I have of Donington was it all blurs into one, but it was the year Ozzy was on, and I think he was like third on the bill, so I'm going to say 86 for argument's sake. And it was the height of bottle throwing.
Yeah, piss.
People would piss in bottles or plastic.
Because they couldn't. And this,
there was nowhere else to
This builds into the great tragedy that we will mention. This is an upbeat podcast. We'll talk about it a little bit. But yeah, at the time you would go in there, and this is no reflection on Donington as a festival as and of itself, because all festivals were like that, such as they were. You just let people in. There wasn't the sort of health and safety considerations that there are today.
And rock fans were considered cattle.
Yeah, it was the same in football grounds. It was exactly the same in football grounds, and they had their tragedies in the same way. In that when you went to those mass events, you were treated in a certain way in England, in Britain. And it had its tragedies. And you at Donington, you would, if you were at the front, and same with Reading, you were packed in.
Oh yeah.
And so if you needed to piss, you either pissed in your jeans or you pissed in a bottle. And if you're pissing in a bottle, you're probably pissed. So you'd then chuck the bottle at someone.
Well, if
you're probably waiting for the band you don't like. I know. Oh, let's liven up Marillion's set. There you go, fish. Have that.
The bands would start
here
at
I am
1
once
or
more.
1:30, but
Bang.
the punters have been there since 9 a.m. or whenever out the gates. And 8 hours of that, and you lose all trace of humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Ozzy saying to me that year the sun had come out. They've been pissing with rain.
There's the other way about Donington. It always rained, didn't it? That's astonishing. Middle of August. Guaranteed rain. You want to know what day of the year? You want to go into a bookmaker and guaranteed rain.
And he said to me, he goes, all that mud earlier. He goes, the crowd just sank into it. He goes, but now the sun's out again. He goes, they're starting to pop out of the ground again. He goes, it's fucking great. But the bombardment was so bad. It was the year that Bad News are on the bill.
Oh, yeah,
And Tommy Vance, the late great rock DJ, went out in an American football helmet.
Yeah.
And literally cans and bottles were bouncing off his helmet.
Yeah.
And he was a much loved figure in the rock community. And everybody was shitting it. And then Ozzy was about to go on. And he's like, I don't give a fuck. So he went out there and literally the first bottle of piss that landed at his feet, he picked it up and he drank it.
Oh, man.
And at that point, he was like, more.
Yeah.
And they stopped.
Yeah.
They went, this guy's fucking madder than us.
Yeah.
And he had a sensational set. He was like the takeaway from that day.
Yeah.
He was amazing. And I still can't remember who was headlining that year, but I just remember him, and it was like he had a special superpower.
Yeah, he was one of those guys who just,
he was a real man of the people.
Yeah. I think it is that common touch, isn't it? That not everyone has it, because a lot of the American bands. Well, actually, no. The band that really got it badly at Donington, was Def Leppard, because they were presumed to be.
Are you sure it wasn't Reading?
I thought it was Donington. See, we should have done our research. I'm sure it was Donington. They were presumed to be American. They knew they weren't American, but they were, they'd been big in America. I'm now going to turn on
No, it's Reading.
I'm going to turn on my mobile phone.
We're going to fight over this, aren't we?
We are. Well, we're going to fight until this phone comes on.
While you check that, let me tell a mud story.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, not Donington, seeing as you've switched festivals. In 1985, when Deep Purple did Nebworth, and it was the reformation of Mark II Deep Purple with Gillan, Blackmore, and they did Nebworth, and Nebworth was even more of a crowning achievement.
Yeah, because Zeppelin had sort of set it up as such.
Absolutely. Anyway, it was a dreadful bill. Meatloaf got bottled off, and probably Magnum and a few others, and then finally Deep Purple. talk about rain. When I left the festival that day, up to my armpits was just mud.
Yeah.
But I remember standing on a table in the guest area to look at the stage, and you got a perfect view, but then within about 3 numbers, you realise you could barely see over people's heads. The table had sunk into the mud, right up to the tabletop.
Yeah.
And that was when you knew you were in some kind of festival hell.
Yeah.
Right, you're gonna.
While I'm googling that, I mean, maybe you could say a bit. I mean, 1988 was the year of. I mean, I think the Kerrang issue that came out probably on the Tuesday afterwards just had a picture of the crowd on the front, and the headline I think was the Donington, the Triumph and the Tragedy.
Yeah.
Which I was thinking about this morning, thinking maybe even that was slightly misplaced because. Really, it was just a tragedy. You know, in this day and age, if that had happened, I think the gig would have been called off.
You might well be right. I think it also there would have been no hiding it because of phones.
Yeah, everyone would have known.
Everybody would have known. Everybody in the crowd, everybody backstage. I was there. I didn't know anything about it until the end of the day.
No, that's right. Yeah,
they hid it from everybody. And what we're talking about, of course, is the death of 2 fans who were trampled to death in the mud at the front of the stage during the Guns N' Roses set because they were they the first band on that year?
They were second on, and what had happened, obviously, between them being booked and the festival was Appetite for Destruction. I mean, it had probably even come out when they were booked, but Appetite, as everyone knows, took about 6 months or whatever it was, a year before it took. But then I think. I mean, again, we should have done a bit more research, but they might have even been up to Sweet Child of Mine having been a hit by that point.
They were, I can remember it.
Yeah.
I've written enough books on them by now.
So I mean, that's their biggest song, isn't it? Their biggest song was a worldwide hit.
Yeah.
So instead of moving them up the bill, they stayed for the lunchtime set, second band on, and everyone in that arena wanted to see them.
Yeah.
They
could have headlined.
Yeah, they were probably the biggest band in the world already at that point.
Oh, no, absolutely. And they were the coolest, and they were the one everybody wanted to see, and everyone wanted to say they had seen. And dreadful, windy, wet day, lots of mud, and these 2 kids were trampled to death.
Yeah.
It was a mind-blowing tragedy. But because of the nature of the times, where I think only very rich people even had a brick-like mobile phone. Hang on, John's showing me his...
I'm showing my victory is about to be proclaimed.
According to John's dodgy information gatherer...
A phone I got in...
Def Leppard appeared on the bill...
phone I got off a bloke in a market.
1986... So Ozzy was the headliner that year. Well, I'll be damned. I said he was like 3rd on the bill. No, he was the headliner.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, Ozzy.
And that was the bad news year.
Yeah, no,
but I've got a feeling that was at the point where Leopard, you know, they made a kind of triumphant return slightly later. Maybe I don't know. I could be wrong.
The festival I'm thinking of is Reading. There was a dreadful appearance at Reading after their first album. Second album had been a hit, and
but they weren't big in America by that point. Were they?
They were. They were.
Were they?
Yeah, they got big in America, and that was the whole point. Def Leppard, a flash bastards, sold out to America.
Yeah.
Yada yada. Yeah, you're right about 86, but Hysteria didn't come out till 87. So
no,
so the
87 lineup, Bon Jovi, and then I can't believe you don't remember because your old mate was second on the bill.
Who's that then?
Dio.
What year?
1987. Second on the bill, Dio. Third on the bill.
Oh, 87. Yeah. Sorry, yes.
Bon Jovi headline, that's what I was just saying.
Yes.
Listen up. 1987. Do you remember that? Bon Jovi, Dio, Metallica.
Yes. And that was the year Metallica got pissed off because Bon Jovi flew over the crowd during their set.
Yeah.
And forever after, I don't know, forever after... But right after that, James Hetfield always used to write on his guitar, "Kill Bon Jovi."
Yeah.
And that stayed there for quite a few years. I remember John Bon Jovi saying to me, "No, we didn't do it deliberately, man."
No.
Because John Bon Jovi's never upstaged anybody.
No.
And just because Metallica were like the coolest band in the world at that point.
Yeah.
purely a coincidence.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Yeah, and then Anthrax, Wasp, Cinderella.
Cinderella,
Our
your
old
friends.
pals, my chums. Larry Mazer was probably there. I was probably avoiding Larry Mazer. That's why I forgot they were on.
I like Larry Mazer. I remember having.
I
I remember
nothing
having
against-
lunch with him at the Sunset Marquee.
Yeah.
And he was
This is
telling
why
me
you liked him.
he bought lunch. I
Yeah.
loved him. He was a good man. He was telling me about the new Cinderella video.
Right.
And what was that song? Long Winter or Long
Long Cold Winter.
Was
I
that?
think this was the one the argument was about.
Oh, okay. And he said, "Oh man," he goes, "Oh no, it wasn't the video." He goes, "Planning the stage show, and when they come out and do Long Cold Winter, we've got snow coming from the wings." And I'm sitting with Ross, and Ross is just yawning in his face. "Oh yeah, that's really original.
Yeah.
Snow, Long Cold. Yeah, I get it, Larry." I remember Larry said Dave Thorne was the big A&R guy in London. He goes, "Well, Dave Thorne loves it." And Ross goes, "Dave, you're." We must do an episode on Ross.
We should
one
just do a
day,
Ross episode, yeah.
because he is the master.
Yeah. 1988, which is the year we're talking about. The year of-
To address, yeah, okay, yeah, go on. Yeah.
So I'll tell you who was on, and then because this makes sense.
I can tell you. That's how good my memory is.
Oh, because you just saw the phone.
No, because I actually hosted those
So
shows in Europe.
So who opened the show?
in the UK.
In the yeah,
Halloween.
at Donington.
Halloween.
Halloween.
Sorry, Halloween. Yeah. Followed by Guns N' Roses.
Yes, misplaced as we said.
Followed by Megadeth.
Megadeth, correct.
Followed by Kiss.
Almost.
Oh no! Followed by David Lee
For
Roth.
David Lee Roth.
Followed by Kiss.
Coming at you live between your naked steaming eyes and ears. And and then the Bloody Maiden. But obviously, Halloween were also managed by Rod Small, which their
Yes.
place on the bill makes sense.
But here's what I was going to say with that triumph and tragedy.
Yes.
I actually think at the time that was a fairly accurate
Yeah.
summing up, because that, in terms purely of the groups on the bill, how popular the event was probably the biggest and best Donington ever.
Oh, yes.
Other than the fact it was
Yes.
also the worst
Yes.
Donington ever, because of the terrible deaths of these two kids, these poor kids. I mean, you're absolutely right. If that happened now, the whole thing would be called off immediately. But back then, there was no social media. Mobile phones barely existed. It was all radios. Do you remember? People had radios.
Yeah, that's
in
right.
those
Yeah,
days.
yeah. And
not radios. What do you call them? Walkie-talkies. Backstage.
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
And they didn't tell Maiden, they didn't tell Kiss, they didn't tell David Lee Roth, they didn't tell any of the bands that
See,
were going
that's
to go on.
amazing, isn't it? Did they tell Guns N' Roses?
No. Oh, hang on. Guns N' Roses left the site not long after they finished their show, and I think there was, I think they did talk to them when they were back at the hotel. But it was kind of like they weren't about to text anybody and tell them, because there wasn't any.
No,
text.
there was no text. That's right.
No
yeah.
WhatsApp, nothing. Now, John,
Yes.
you've got to put your phone away.
Because I'm just trying to. You know what? I'll do it in a minute. I will
Put the phone away.
I'll do it in a minute. But
Step away from the phone.
I always do. I don't like when. A couple of people died. I think it's only fair to say who they were. So I was just going to find their names. I think Landon Siggers was one from
Yes,
memory.
definitely.
And so too, the cause of this was later, I think, ascertained to be there was a sort of natural slope going down towards the stage, and it became incredibly muddy
And slippery.
And when Guns N' Roses came on, there was a big crowd surge towards the stage because they wanted to see them, and that's what caused the problem. And I think I've got a memory now that Axl saw something was going on and was telling them, he was telling people to back off.
They stopped the show.
Yeah.
Axl told people to back off, and then his final words as they left the stage that day was, "Don't kill yourself."
That's right. Yeah.
But here's the thing, okay? The other component of this, and this is where the triumph thing comes in, even though obviously an incredibly hollow statement at this point. It was the biggest Donington ever. it was the final year where you could just turn up and get in. And so many people, on the day, I remember being told there was 116,000 people there. But when it went to the inquest and the court, they toned it right down and said there was...
It was like the old football ground thing. You used to go to football matches back then, and you'd see the attendance in the paper the next day.
Yeah.
And it'd be like 30 there. You think there were, we were crammed in.
Well, they ran out of tickets. So they were stamping people's hands to let them in. And apparently there was literally like a tribe of people still coming over the hills at like 4 p.m. Yeah. It was just
And this
insane.
is astonishing. And, two people are known to have died. It was Alan Dick and Landon Siggers. One was 18, one was 20, so incredibly young. It's a terrible thing. And, and again, this isn't, these were different times. It's not a reflection on the people involved at the time. But it is astonishing that the festival didn't stop. It really is. Because who's to say it wouldn't happen again? I mean, it's happened once. What did they do to stop it happening again?
Well,
on the day.
One thing they did was restrict the attendance.
No, I mean on the day. It's already happened once on the day.
What you mean.
Half the festival took place in darkness, didn't it? Because by the time the headlines
that's a really
came
good point. I hadn't thought of that, but that is true.
Yeah.
After that, they didn't have Donington the following year. It came back in 1990. And at that point, I think the attendance was capped at something like 72.
Yeah.
You could only get in if you had a prepaid ticket, and new kind of protocols were put in place. But I'll tell you the one thing that didn't change, and again, I remember this very well. I was doing Tommy Vance's Friday Rock Show, was broadcasting some of the concert, all of the concert live. And as a sort of roving reporter, I was going around interviewing groups and people connected to the show. And at one point, I was doing an on-air piece about the merchandise. And it's just right at the end of the day before the main band come on. And as the sun is going down. And I went back to where the merch people were. And they had... There were credit cards back then, obviously, but mostly people paid in cash, particularly younger rock fans. And they had about 15 or 20 plastic bins, not bin liners, the old-fashioned big tub, waist-high. And they were shoving the cash into these bins. And they had so much cash that they were lifting up members of the merchandising company and bouncing them so that they were like grapes. So they would stuff the cash lower and lower into these bins. And then the two men pushing on it and and then they'd get a lid and they'd be trying to put the lid on. Notes would be going everywhere in the wind. And I'm watching this. And I remember one of them saying, should he be here seeing this? No, he's all right. He's Mick. He's okay. Yeah. But my eyes were popping out of my head. Yeah. There must have been, I don't know, £1 million or something. So, and that wasn't ticket money. That was on the day buying a shirt or whatever you bought, your wristband.
Because you wonder, I don't know what the business deal was, but I know by the time Maiden did it, which was, that year of 88, wasn't it? Rod had practically taken it over. In terms of there would be a Donington T-shirt, but there was also an Iron Maiden at Donington T-shirt.
Absolutely.
And there was the different Eddie and all those. And
go on.
What there was the Iron Maiden stand, the grandstand. Do you remember that?
Oh God, yeah.
They built for the first time for lucky members of the press, so you could make sure you could see Iron Maiden's set. And the flip side of that, Rod Smallwood could make sure he could see you were in your seat watching Iron Maiden. And by the time that Iron Maiden set happened, it was cold. Yeah. And up in that stand was cold. It was
freezing.
Yeah.
Because it was a typically British summer's night in August.
But it had become by that point, and as you say, you were off on the tour, weren't you? Because the Monsters of Rock, though it started off in
by now
in Donington, it was a Europe-wide festival.
And in fact, the following year, 89, when it didn't happen in England, it happened in America.
Right.
And we're kind of overlapping now back to the managers episode, because Sharon Osbourne had copyrighted or patented the phrase Monsters of Rock in America.
Yeah.
And in fact, Ozzy was supposed to have headlined the first Monsters of Rock tour in America. I can't remember what happened, but it didn't pan out. But Jimmy Page, had just got back, and as part of some deal, his solo album was coming out, and as part of some deal he'd done, the merchandisers were showing him the mock-up of the event T-shirt for the first ever American Monsters of Rock, and it was Ozzy, because he was the headliner. But by the time the thing actually took off, Ozzy was no longer on the bill. In fact, it was Van Halen or Van Hagar.
Yeah.
And
that's right. Yes.
and it was the American Monsters of Rock show.
Yeah.
And Sharon told me, I said, so did you do a deal? She said, do you know what? I gave it to them just for that 1 year. MTV were involved, and she just decided she'd make more friends by saying, do you know what? You can use it.
Wow.
And the idea was it was going to be every year.
Yeah.
So I think she's thinking, this one's for you, and then next year, when everybody loves me,
that's for me.
That's when you pay.
That's for me. Yeah.
Which is, again, brilliant business sense.
Well, the great thing Rod Smalldoors used to do was whenever Iron Maiden did Donington, it would be only UK show this year.
Yeah.
And then the Monday after Donington, like clockwork, the phone would ring in the Kerrang office. Rod Small would be on it. Such a massive success. The lads want to do a thank you tour. They want to thank the fans properly by going on tour.
Yeah.
And obviously, of course, it was because he didn't want to mess the ticket sales up for either event.
I love how they thanked the fans by taking even more of their money.
Yeah.
I tell you what, John, that's my rock and roll dog in the background. Could you possibly pull that window closed? And I'm gonna bring us towards an ending here with another memory, and I think that I've got to say poignant, but also silly and funny. Donington Monsters of Rock ceased to be kind of post-grunge.
Yeah.
It turned into
another thing grunge ruined, yeah.
But it was known as the Download Festival.
Coppo thought that up, didn't he? Andy Copping.
What a man.
Yeah.
We'll talk about him another day. But so I didn't, and this coincided with me getting older and children, and anyway, a whole new generation comes along. And in 2009, I went to the Download Festival, which is basically Donington.
Yeah.
Same spot, except it's now 2009. It's not 1989.
Yeah.
Multiple stages.
Yeah.
The security were gentlemen, all of them, which is something you never got. You get them complete bastards, kick your head in if you looked at them funny. And I remember being in a teepee backstage, a teepee, a series of teepees, having sushi and cappuccino before venturing out to maybe look at one of the 18 different stages or vegan, environmentally bum-warming area.
Yeah.
And it was exceedingly pleasant, but I thought, this is so not the experience of my youth. And here was the capper. I hadn't been to Donington or Download, whatever you want to call it, for nearly 20 years. And, of course, I'm meeting a lot of the bands. Talk about knowing you're old. Who were the fucking bands that year? I can't remember, but pretty much Def Leppard were on, and that was all right. They were my old mates, that was a laugh.
Of course,
although we're all sitting around drinking cappuccinos as opposed to beers. You know. But all the younger bands... and some, Down with Phil
Anselmo,
got introduced. Mick Wall, it's an honour to meet you, sir.
Oh,
it's an honour to meet you, sir.
What's wrong with that? I think.
Well, you may as well just say, "Are you all right there, Grandad?"
I suppose.
Isn't it nice of you to come out in the fresh air now and again?
Yeah.
What do you mean? It's a fucking honour to meet me, you twat.
I hope you said that.
No, but I thought it.
You thought it. Yeah.
No, I was so taken aback.
Yeah.
So the first time it happened, I thought, oh, well, idiot. But then everyone, it's an honour to meet you, sir. No, it's great to meet you, sir. When did I turn into a sir? It was an honour to meet.
Yeah.
There's only one more less dignified moment than that, and that was buying a drink. Eventually, buying a drink because no one was drinking, and I dropped some money on the ground, and a young woman swooped down to pick it up for me. Went, there you go, there you go.
Yeah.
And I was outraged. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? I can get down and get my own money. Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
No.
But I'm saying it now, John.
Yeah, I can. I feel.
It's
your
11
rage.
years
I
later.
feel-
I'm
I
still
feel-
burning.
Imagine if you went now. I mean, Jesus, what that would be like.
Well, that would be different because
Yeah.
I would want her to get the
that's
money.
yeah, that's true. I suppose the one thing we haven't talked about that I think I associate Donington with one person, and it isn't a person you'd immediately think of. That person is Marino. If you remember Marino of Marino and Lisa Dominique fame.
Yeah, we're not talking about Frank Marino.
Well,
We're talking
well,
about
not
the
he-
less famous Marino.
Well, less famous, yeah. And
Unless you were in prison with it.
yeah. Let's not discuss the
That's for another time.
That's for another time, another story, another yarn. But he Marino was a great character on the scene. Lisa Dominique was his sister, and Lisa was the perennial winner of the Kerrang poll for sexiest woman.
Lady killer.
Lady
She was a
killer,
lady
she was a lady killer, mainly because she'd do the photos and play ball.
She used to sit. Remember, she used to
Sit
sit
on
our publisher's
Bomber
lap.
Bob Thrussell's lap,
had-
kissing his head.
Yeah,
Kissing his head.
Kerrang had this very old. I'm probably older than he was now, but
used to pick his change up. There you go. So you're changing the floor, Bob.
Lisa would sit on Bob's lap. This very sexy, pretty blonde girl in hardly any clothes at all.
Yeah.
She'd sit on his lap in the Kerrang office, kiss his bald
Kiss
head.
his bald, he'd have a big kiss, and he'd be smiling, wouldn't he? But be
well, who wouldn't be smiling? I'm smiling now.
I'm thinking about it. But I mean, Marino and Lisa would always be in the Kerrang office. Marino came in regular as clockwork because he used to take his little lad out in the.
We should
in the
say
back.
they had a group, and he was the guitarist.
He
and
was
she
the guitarist,
the
she was the
singer.
singer, yeah.
And they were called Marino the Band.
That's right. And then Lisa went solo, but Marino was still the guitarist. And he had his sort of parallel solo career as a kind of Santana style guitar player.
He was a very good guitarist.
He was a funny guy. The point about Marino was he was funny.
Yeah.
And although he was sort of quite embittered by various people being more famous than him or what have you. And
Almost everybody.
it was. And he'd go on and on about, a gig at the Marquee he had coming up or something. But he would take these little lads in the back of Kerrang every week. So he was one of the people who get the pass, could come to the Kerrang. So he persuaded me that I didn't take much persuasion that he did, because I was, he was a funny guy. He used to make me laugh.
Oh, yeah.
And and we did a couple of going on tour with Lisa Dominique to Spain with Saxon was one of the great experiences. It was just the most ridiculous tour on earth. But that's a story for another time. But Marino decided we'll drive up to Donington. And at the time I was a bit flush. We used to get paid. We used to get a cheque every week from Kerrang. When I got offered the Kerrang, I'll tell the story now. When I got offered the Kerrang news editor's job,
right.
the magazine had just gone weekly. Jeff Barton came up to me and he goes, "It's 250 quid an issue. Is that all right for you?" And I thought, 250 quid? It comes out every week. He's offering me 250. Bear in mind, I've been getting about sort of 20 quid for an album review.
Yeah.
It's like, I think I can see my way clear to doing it for 250 quid a week. And every week, Bomber Bob would sign the checks, wouldn't he? And the publisher would physically sign. If you don't know what a check is. It's this old way of getting paid before we did it all electronically. And you get the cheque every week, little envelope with your name on. So I was a bit flushed. So I had this MG sports car.
Oh, I remember.
Do you remember? It's a red MG sports car. And by this point, Crusher's legendary
Green
car
machine.
park pass. They used to send you a car park pass that you would stick in the car, So we go up to, I'm driving Marino up to, it's a two-seater. So all the way up the M1, I've got Marino jawing away in my ear. And we get up, and you remember when you used to drive in, and it was like, because it was a racetrack, it's quite a long drive in, and all the kids would be, the kids. We were the same age as the kids. But all the fans would be walking in and they'd all be looking to see whose car it was. And Marino had stuck the car park pass in so everyone could see it. You know, so they could see it. And they're looking and going, who is it? Who is it? And the sheer disappointment when they realised it was Marino, because it was quite a good car, you know, so they're thinking, oh, maybe it's, I don't know, someone halfway up the bill, you know, maybe it's Lars or someone, you know. But
no, it was Marino from Marino the band.
But he's got his sunglasses on.
Of course he has.
He knew how to live, Marino. You know, he's always having a cigar and a champagne and all the rest of it. And we're in and that year, God, it was a, you know, debauched year. And everyone stayed up. I don't know how we used to do it. Stayed up for hours and hours and days on end. So the Friday night was a big party. Maybe you got a few hours sleep before the festival started. Then you went to the festival and it's all day. And then it's back to the post house or whatever. Yeah. And as you say, people would go between the two. So it's this endlessly moving party. And by the middle of the Saturday night, Marino comes back in. And he'd been outside, just gone outside. Because why would you go outside in the Midlands, in the middle, you know, at 5 o'clock in the morning? He'd gone outside. Me and Ray Palmer went to look for him. He'd been outside for so long. And he came back convinced he'd seen a werewolf. He's convinced he'd seen a werewolf. I mean, that's how long we'd been up for. And then Malcolm Dome came out of some toilet or something. And it was like...
He'd been unconscious in the toilet for a few hours.
Yeah, it was like an apparition.
Yeah.
You know, he'd just come back to it was like Reanimator or something. He came out of the toilet covered in something.
Sick. Yeah.
Whatever it was. Yeah. God knows what it was. And that led to the creation of Malcolm's Law, which I think we all thought up in the pub, with Malcolm, which was wherever you were... And whatever you were doing, Malcolm was somewhere worse, doing something worse. And we were all about going like 4 in the morning, ha, 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 ha. And that was how the sort of legends were made, wasn't it? You know, you'd come back and write up View from the Bar, and it would be like the werewolf and the Mad Malk appearing out of nowhere.
And on that tremendously exciting note, we come to the end of another Getcha Rocks Off podcast. We'll join. Like I say, you'll join us. I expect.
I
hope some other time
for something else.
If you liked this episode, be sure to leave us a review, share it with a friend, or plain old subscribe wherever you happen to listen to it. For full episode show notes, visit nofilter.media/Getcha Rocks Off.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.